Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today. We will discuss you are the most influential person in your life with a speaker, Vaish, veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. A correction, actually, we are live from Silicon Valley as well as Toronto at the same time today. Vaish is in Toronto. So thank you, Vaish, for accommodating despite your hectic travel schedule, and glad welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Well, JM, there's no place I'd rather be. And thank you everyone for taking time in the middle of your day to come on in. We have a good one for you today. I think that it'll give you some special tools that you'll appreciate for lifting any practice you're already in. And Andy, good to see you. Debbie, Mark, Mayank's Otter's here, as usual. Prati, great. Raj, Rajesh, Rebecca, Shiva Kumar, Subhadra, always. Tejas, nice. Turtle, fantastic. VM, they're coming in fast now. Zela, thank you. Great, everyone. Thanks for being here. JM, is my sound okay?
Yes, it's okay. It's good.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe sounds like I'm in a jet airplane because it's really hot and humid up here. And the room I'm in right now just has a fan. If it comes overbearing, let me know.
No, there is no fan background noise. It's clear.
Okay. Thanks to Apple iPods. So it's really helpful to reconsider where our core of power comes from in our lives. How is it that we're able to do what we do anyway? Seems that we attain various goals and we're able to muster the energy, but when we give good definition to it, sometimes it helps to see what is it that's actually making me move, and whether it's in spiritual practice or anything else you're doing, there's some basic principles that are helpful. And so before we start, let's just center for a minute and take a moment of introspection, meditation. Try closing your eyes, sitting up a little straighter than you were a moment ago, and just bring your attention to your breath and just try to relax. But keep an alert mind. And notice that you have the power of choice of where to place your attention. We invest our attention throughout the day in various places, sometimes knowingly, other times unknowingly. But it's important to know that it's we who are doing it, and we're not being dragged haphazardly from one place to the next. So as you're breathing, just silently count how many moments it takes, how many seconds it takes for an exhale, and how many for an inhale. And keep your mind on your breath. Mine may have been on other projects, but now you can just be here for a moment, just for now, and let everything else go out of focus. And relax. Keep an alert mind. And notice the power of your own attention. And now as you're breathing and relaxing, in your mind's eye, put up the mantra Rama, R-A-M-A. Just write it on the screen of your mind and look at the word Rama. And without using your vocal cords, just use your internal voice. Say the mantra Rama 3 times and look at the syllables in your mind. I'll say it out loud and you can follow along if you wish. Rama, Rama, Rama. Now just notice any effects of the vibration of the mantra in your mind. And bring your attention back to your breath. And then rub your hands together to get some external sensation. Open your eyes and come back into the room. So different kinds of sound vibrations have different effects on us. The whole universe is awash in resonance, the vibration in everything. And one of the ways that the Bhakti teachings show us to come into alignment, state of yoga or connection, is through the sound vibration. So mantra meditation is very powerful. Just by vibrating the mantra and being aware of it, we can align ourselves. Now we'll go to some of the slides and we'll talk about fulcrum of power that we all have. And the first point is that we are the greatest influence in our own lives. Who could care more about you than yourself? And also, the decisions that we make from moment to moment are the most consequential, more consequential than what other people say or do around us. That you are the most influential person in your life. How does that sound to you? To know or to at least theorize that you're the most important or influential person in your life. I say influential. To make it feel better or worse?
Can we share reactions or go ahead, Mark.
I think it's very empowering, because I kind of feel like in today's world that's filled with distractions, it's easy to lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Thanks for vocalizing and articulating it so well, Mark. So many different influences, distractions, but it feels like empowering, doesn't it? To realize that we can change things at any moment if we get in touch with the power we have, which I was just describing part of where we're placing our attention, because where attention goes, energy flows. And realizing we have the power to shift our attention from one place to the next. Go ahead, Chayam. Shiv Kumar said, we are responsible for our own life, not blame anyone for the state of our life. Nice. And Mukta said, I do also feel it is revealing. Oh, good. That's what I was hoping for. So invest your thoughts. Thoughts are things. And whichever thoughts we allow to predominate in our mind, according to the Bhagavad Gita, will determine our future. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a famous verse in Sanskrit that says, Yang yang vati smaran bhavam tajayante kalevaram tam tam evaite kontaya sadatad bhavabhavita. Means that the aggregate of your thoughts, you collect them, you strengthen them by giving them your full attention and so forth. They form what's called a bhava. Can somebody put that into the chat box? Bhava means an overwhelming feeling. It's what we're most attracted to, that kind of feeling we have. It compels us to various objects in the world or certain kinds of people, because it's our internal environment, the feeling that we have. These come from the aggregate of the thoughts, the impressions that we take in from the world, and we develop this sense, this bhava. So the verse that I just quoted from the Bhagavad Gita says, that feeling even carries us from one life to the next. According to your predominant feeling when you leave this present body, it carries you to your next life. That's why these wisdom texts talk so much about not just being aware of your thoughts, but also investing wisely, what you think about. And if you're able to direct your thoughts, your thinking power to the higher subject matter that has to do with what's beyond just this material body and the elements of the material world, then we naturally go there. We are carried by that to a higher destination. So there are various modes of nature. And when we're in the grips of the lower modalities called rajas and tamas, it's very hard to control the mind. Maybe come back into the Zoom just for a second. I'll just describe something that maybe we can all relate to. One of the modalities is called rajas. This is the description in the Bhagavad Gita, that there's a sense of unlimited desires and longings. And the definition given for a material desire is a desire that can't be satisfied. It's kind of interesting because you think that, okay, I have a desire, somehow or other I'm going to satisfy it. But a material desire, I'm investing my thoughts in something that's not fulfillable. And that's rajas. It's chasing after things and then realizing their futility after we get them. But I keep chasing after them. And then tamas is the lowest. It's very dark energy. And it's the point at which I feel overwhelmed by inertia. I can't really get up and moving, and I'm overcome with feelings of procrastination and so forth. And even self-harm in the darkness of tamogun. So these two modalities, rajas and tamas, mix together, and you get an interesting beverage that's not helpful. But then there's a higher mode called sattva. Sattva is modality of clarity, wisdom, the light comes through. You can see the difference between yourself and your body and mind. It's called sattvam yad brahmadarshanam. From sattva, from that higher modality in life, you'll see not just yourself, but others as being spiritual beings. And it's from that level that we have more choice, more clarity about where we invest our thoughts and what kind of thoughts we let stay in. So one of the predominant practices for improvement means living in a sattvic style. One of the ways that sattva becomes more prominent in our life is by the food we eat, when it's wholesome, fresh, nonviolent, and so forth. It really has an effect on our overall being. And then our sleeping habits. Best or the most sattvic time of the day is earlier. around before the sun comes up. Early to bed, early to rise makes a person healthy, wealthy, wise. It's an old saying. But these all refer to sattvic practices. And then there's, of course, there's sattva in speech, how we speak makes a difference. And so refining lifestyle and then coming to the point of realizing that we have a choice of which thoughts to keep and also what kind of thoughts to cultivate. Where we're placing our attention from moment to moment, day to day, makes a difference in the state of our minds as we're drawn by the objects that we meditate on. This is something I've mentioned before, a principle from the Bhagavad Gita that says Jayato. It starts with the word meditation. Whatever you meditate on, whatever you contemplate in this world, you draw into your life. So it says Jayato Vishayan Punsam Sangas Teshu Pujayate. When you meditate on something, you become absorbed in it, then it becomes part of your life. And we have a connection with it then. So you have to be careful what you connect to, because that becomes a burden if it's something unworthy of your actual nature as a spiritual being. What about this principle of investing your thoughts and how does it sound to you, this proposal given by the Bhagavad Gita that we're directing ourselves? And even when we leave the present body that we're in, often a subject matter that we don't think about because it's sort of unthinkable. I think I'll put it off till a later time. Yes, Charles.
Hare Krishna, Vaisheshka Prabhu.
Hey, good to see you.
Likewise. I wasn't sure if you asked me a question there. If it's I did want to give a response.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that idea just really struck me in terms of investing in stocks. I grew up, just growing up, like every dollar counted, and I find myself till this day, like always continuously monitoring how I spend money. But it's like, why don't I do the same thing for something as precious as my thoughts that kind of control, or not kind of, they do control how I then go ahead and act. And so that really hit me, what if I apply the same thing to, what I'm thinking about, where I'm placing my thoughts. I think another good place to place that is with time as well. I think I do an okay job with that. Could be better. But yeah, this principle really hit me. It's nice to like have that permission to go do it and to know that it's a good thing to go do.
Well, as usual, Charles, you said what I was trying to say or wanted to say, but with much more panache and articulation. That was really amazing. Thank you. Yeah, in fact, there's a concept we talked about previously, worth bringing up in this context again. Everyone's familiar. And I love how you brought in the metaphor of investing money. It's really apt. And there's a way we talk about return on investment. If you're an astute investor, you math things up and you look and say, where do I get the best return on my investment? So the yogis say, where do I get the best return on my attention? So instead of ROI, what is it?
ROA for 10.
Yeah, ROA. How's your ROA doing? So what kind of ROA are you getting? What kind of return on attention? If you look at things that are specifically designed for distraction, like nowadays it's become it's an epidemic proportion of addictions for screen watching and just scrolling. I see it on the plane all the time. People have a screen, what they fill their time with. Like I just took a flight from San Francisco to Toronto recently, and I was just looking around, and I noticed that people are very, very good at using their time, not a second wasted, but it's all for in between taxiing and getting off the plane, like flip, 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 flip. I couldn't keep up. And so, there's that. what kind of return do you get on your attention for that? It may, I mean, I hate to sound like a parent or something like that, but it could scramble your brain. Just looking at images flying by again and again. It could train your brain in the wrong way. And you could really get a kind of anxiety disorder because things aren't moving fast enough in regular life. If you just go out and look at a tree, it's like, come on, move. So Sattvagun means, we're able to be in one place and enter deeply within a natural object, for instance, and be able to appreciate it. So yeah, I love the way you connected those two things, investing money and investing your attention. Fantastic. JM, what else?
Yeah, there are a couple of thoughts on the chat. One is from Mayank. He has a question. He's asking, in this context, are thoughts and desires mean the same thing?
That's a really good question. That's Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna asks him, what is the symptom of somebody who's fixed in consciousness? He says, Prajahati kaman sarvam partamanogatam, which means that the person's able to notice the desires. So the word in Sanskrit is kaman. It's a particular way of conjugating the word kama, which means like desire. Sometimes it's translated as lust. So it's mostly spoken about as a kind of desire. But also in Patanjali Muni's treatise called the Yoga Sutras, he describes how whatever impressions or images we take in from the world also come back to us. They get reactivated. They're latent until they get reactivated, and they just come in as impressions. So those could be thoughts, like in dreams. If you've seen gold and you've seen a mountain, then you can get a golden mountain image, because there's combinations and permutations of this thought energy. So there's kind of both, and they could be slightly different, because kama means you have a specific object that you're after, whereas this other expression of samskars or images that get repeated in your mind are more like thought energy that's just moving. It's an excellent question. Hey, look, Vicky put something up.
Yeah. Vicky, she just shared thought that investing our thoughts means we have to carefully consider the eventual return on our choices in the moment.
I love that. Wow. There's a lot behind that. Are you in any position to say more, Vicky, or are you in just typing mode right now?
I just want to check if the volume is okay. I'm in the school library right now.
That's pretty good. Okay. Yeah, why don't you try it? Because I'm really interested what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I think oftentimes when I make a choice, I think that it's only going to affect me in that moment. But if I think of it as an investment, then I'm thinking about the long-term impact. And it's not just about this one moment, but every moment that comes after.
Yeah, it's amazing. The time factor reveals many things, like seeds that I think, or I don't even know are there, can pop up. Would speak of thought energy, which sometimes described as seeds, like bija, and desires. They can be stuffed, and then later they just come out in various ways. And remembering that, and yeah, it's a really important principle you're talking about. That if you think about it in the moment, that this actually will have an impact on me one way or another. Nothing is insignificant. Whatever I think about, whatever I do, whatever I take in, it has its effect in the aggregate, or it can come out specifically in a certain part of my life to push me in a certain way. Yeah, this is really good. Thank you very much, Vicky. Fantastic.
Yeah, and as Zila followed up, she says, I recently heard to consider the impact on choices in 10 minutes, 3 months, and 1 year, or similar ranges.
Yeah, again, way to go, Zila, bringing it back into that metaphor for investing money. I mean, anybody who's studied the science of investing knows about compounded interest. And also, when you think ahead, monetary choices, some people don't think ahead, and then they end up in trouble and in debt and so forth. And similarly, what we feed ourselves thought-wise and thought world has that effect. So considering the impact for 10-minute, 3-month, and 1 year. I love that. Excellent. All right, let's go to the next point. There's a few more. Some of them I think you're really going to like. There are things we could take away with us. This is definitely a takeaway. It's already affecting me. I can feel it. So the next couple of slides, I want to talk about resistance. I love this concept, and actually resistance with a capital R, I borrowed from Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. Not the art of war, but the war of art. And he describes how anyone who takes up a creative process is confronted with this force. He said it's so strong, it pervades the universe and pushes back on us. We want to procrastinate. Writer's block is well known. Points out that people often want to do any other thing except sit and think or write. And actually, try to do something worthwhile. Oftentimes, it's a hard slope to climb, and he describes this as resistance. So come back to the Zoom room just for a moment. I want to know if anybody else has felt this resistance. For instance, in writing, have you ever felt that, oh, this is so difficult looking at a blank page, or in any other creative pursuit? Have you ever felt this resistance? I got a thumbs up from Vicky. I just want to make sure I'm not alone in this one. Turtle, thank you. Fantastic. Mayank. And pray tell, where does it come from? Is it an external force, internal force? What do you think? Resistance. Anytime we're being pushed back, where rather than do something productive, I take another path. Would you say it's internal? Turtle says, I do graphic design for a living, so I'm very familiar with this sensation. How does it feel anyway, Turtle? Generally, for you?
Turtle says frustrating.
Frustrating. I'm going to look that word up. I want to see what frustrating means. Well, hold on. Frustrate. Frustrate comes from Latin. Means disappointed, from the word frustrare, from in vain. In vain. Like nothing's getting done. Okay.
She says, I want something to come, but in that wanting, there is nothing happening.
Yeah. And she liked in vain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something from Mark too.
Yeah, Mark says, I was wondering if you could talk about aligning desire and discipline again sometime. I recently tried to make a list of goals, and sometimes it's not clear what has the highest return on my attention. Further, at the end of the day, I just want inner peace.
Wow. Thanks, Mark. Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is about the inner peace. And another thought is the next slide, which is a different way to go about things. And this is sort of a reverse way of thinking about moving forward in your discipline, whatever it may be. And that is to make a list of the top 101 obstacles to your progress. Let's just see if anybody thinks they could do that. Have you ever tried? Turtle put me. Okay, very good. So, yeah, what about that? Listing obstacles. This is actually a business management practice to anticipate obstacles in advance or current obstacles. But what if you just took a little time to think about what obstacles you might have to making progress and just write them all down? So when we have them clearly in mind, Yeah, actually, go ahead.
Yes,
Something
Zira
you say.
said,
Yeah.
Zira said, agree the mind. I think she's referring to me, mind, something similar.
And the wisdom literatures are totally concur with what you just said, Zila, because they mention that the mind holds sway over us and moves us in various directions. Therefore, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. And if you train the mind properly and you feed it the right kinds of nutritious ideas, then it becomes a friend. And if you feed it, well, distraction and just allow it to go anywhere and stay in an unruly state, then it can become an enemy, drags us to places that we don't want to go.
Anand says, I've been meditating for a month, looking inwards. Self-realization, if you may call, not perfect, but slowly climbing. It's making me more and more disciplined. Long way to go. Vaish Prabhu, Haribol.
Yeah, and it's described how even a mustard seed of progress in such an endeavor, Anand, is worthwhile. Just a tiny bit of advancement makes a huge difference, and it all adds up. And at first, it may seem insignificant, but it becomes more and more effective as we move forward. I wanted to finish this last sentence that Mark put up about. I recently tried to make a list of goals, and sometimes it's not clear what has the highest return on my attention. Further, at the end of the day, I just want inner peace. So one of the solutions to that is to take recommendations from wise sources that say, here's a good investment for your attention. If we guess, then we might hit or miss. But if you take advice from a source you trust, says, here, try this. It's a superfood of good thoughts. And that's one of the reasons I advocated at the beginning for this practice of mantra meditation. There are mantras, a sort of package of special energy, and it comes into our mind by repeating the mantra and being present with the mantra. And one of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who I've been referring to here for the last several months as the Golden Monk, he says, Chaito Darpanamarjanam. What do you get from that practice of mantra meditation? He says, Chaita means the mind. Darpana means a mirror, marjanam. So he says, it's like cleaning the mirror of your mind, the mantra. So it's one of the investments you can make in your mind every day. And I was just doing it this morning. There's a meditation hall here that I visit where we're having sort of a retreat over the weekend here. And it was just so peaceful. Just the act of sitting down and just being with the mantra for a little while. And I give myself full permission not to think about other objectives I have throughout the day, no electronic devices near me. Just I have some beads I chant on, I count the mantras on there so I know how many I'm doing each day. And it was just so nice. Before the sun came up, sitting on a little meditation cushion, there are a few other practitioners in the hall, and I just felt happy. And so, yeah, that's a good investment. Definitely a good investment. Something that you can try. Okay, where are we now, JM? Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's see. Yeah, we got another slide. This is famous quotes. Quotes from life's experience. And this one's from Tom Seaver, famous baseball player from around my time when I was a kid. In baseball, my theory is to strive for consistency, not to worry about the numbers. If you dwell on statistics, you get short-sighted. If you aim for consistency, the numbers will be there at the end. I'm going to read it one more time. It's too nice to not read one more time. In baseball, my theory is to strive for consistency, not to worry about the numbers. If you dwell on statistics, you get short-sighted. If you aim for consistency, the numbers will be there at the end. Let's discuss. I like to say consistency is king, because if you can remain consistent at something, my teacher used to go like this. He'd take his fingers like this in his palm, and he'd say, drops a day, wear the stone away. And he particularly talked about that once in relationship to his writing. He wrote over 80 books after he was 70 years old. And he said, somebody asked him, how did you do that? And he said, drops a day, wear stone a day, wear the stone away. He said, I just try to be consistent. Even if I'm traveling on a busy schedule, I try to do something every day with it. A sentence, a few paragraphs, a few pages, but every day. So this idea of consistency is so powerful. Okay, reactions, thoughts. Let's churn it up a little bit. What do you think?
Mayank said, consistency is king and less is more.
What do you mean by less is more?
I mean to say, if we want to do certain practices that are beneficial to us and not get overwhelmed that there is so much to be done, but doing what we can do now, but consistently, then less is more rather than doing more than what we can do now.
I
So
love
they
it.
both kind of go together.
They really do. It's nice to put them back together. When we were in Los Angeles, I was at a festival, asked to give a short talk, and one of the points I made, pretty much for myself, my own consideration, was oftentimes when we can't do everything, we decide to do nothing. But it's always better to remember that less is more. Better to start with what you can do. Do what you can with what you can, with whatever you have right now, and just make the step. And try to be consistent at it rather than trying to do everything or quitting because you can't do everything. Wow, thanks, Mike. That was great.
Mark
Jam,
had
what
a point.
else?
Mark
Yes.
had a point. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm trying to learn how to play the piano, and I think that quote really resonated with me because some days it's very difficult for me to kind of sit down and practice. But if I tell myself I'm just going to practice for 1 minute, then I end up practicing more than 1 minute. So it feels good just to even have that thought, just how long it is for 1 minute, and yeah, it adds up.
Mark, I feel good just hearing about that. What it sounds like to me is conquering over resistance, because that resistance is so strong. The mind says, you're not going to like it when you sit down. You can't play the piano. At least my mind says that. And then the way you conquered it, I think, is so brilliant, just to sneak in with 1 minute. And then you end up doing more. And even if you don't, 1 minute a day can really inculcate something new into the mind, can it?
Right. Yeah, because that 1 minute is very focused.
I think that really goes along with my Young's point about less is more. Start with something that seems unintimidating, that you can sneak in with, and then let the mind get absorbed. Funny little device, the mind, and how it develops that kind of resistance. Wow, thanks, Mark. Good stuff.
Shubha, go ahead.
Hi, Vish. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Shiva.
Hello. So I've been practicing consistency and trying to be disciplined in my way of life, and especially my spiritual journey. But in the last week, I had a series of challenges and stresses and stressors, external stressors that came from different sources. And it was just like, being this ship in very unruly waters. And I really struggled to keep my mind productive. And I kept reminding myself of the, three modes of nature, and the sattva and the rajas, and I kind of started to feel like, gosh, I found myself in this very distracted state and unable to be productive. So I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for situations when you actually find yourself overwhelmed with all kinds of external factors and really unable to resolve them?
Wow, what a great question. I think it applies pretty much universally. But first, I'm going to read Mark's answer because it's so brilliant. He says, maybe obstacles are there for a reason. Sometimes resistance means we should stop and think, do we really go on in the right direction? And maybe this causes us to re-realize what our values are. Wow, Mark, good stuff. Or maybe we change course. So I so much resonate with that. And I'll just say, according to the perspective that I've gained from the teachers that I've had about that, one of the sayings my teacher, Prabhupada, used to give was failure is the pillars of success. I was like, what does that mean? Failure is the pillars of success. There's ways in which, as Mark's pointing out, these events in our life where we're going along consistently and we're feeling it, and then we get knocked off our schedule and overwhelming circumstances come up and we feel like, oh, what happened to me? So one point is that can help us. One point of how that can lead us to success and how it can become a pillar of success is remembering that we're more instruments than we are the cause of everything. And when we're in more of a mood of akinchana, that I don't have that much power, but I can bring the power in by feeling dependent and, for instance, like praying for the power to come to me, then actually it helps me to become stronger. Because when we're flexible and when we're humble and when we realize that we're not the doer, yes, we have desire. Yes, we're agents to some degree, but we can't complete everything by ourselves. Coming back to that point of realizing how helpless we are can actually be edifying, and sort of this mood of start over. What are my real values? Why am I really doing this? As Mark's saying, realize what got you here in the first place. Just yeah, that's one of the points. And it happens to everybody. Shubha, do you have a follow-up to that, or is your hand just still up from the first question?
No follow-up.
Okay. JM, there are a couple more, Vicky and Turtle.
Yes. So Vicky says, sometimes we think focusing on the numbers is a pursuit of precision, but actually there is a certain precision cultivated as a result of focusing on consistency. It is enough to focus on the eye of the bird.
That's good. You want to say more about the eye of the bird? Unless you're going to get arrested by the librarian.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that particular story and about all the different things that were surrounding the bird, like the trees or something maybe floating through the air. It's just that the mind has the tendency to wander everywhere. But if we can cultivate the consistency to focus on one thing, it's very effective.
Thanks. Of course, I think you're referring to the story in the Mahabharata where this famous martial artist is teaching some students, and he has this target way up high. It's a fish suspended from the top of a tent, and there's a wheel spinning, and he's asking his students, what do you see? When they're about to shoot their arrows, and some are seeing, I see the sky, then I see the wheel, then I see the fish, then I see the eye, and they're supposed to hit the eye. And then teacher says next, and each one of the students seeing this, that, or the other thing. And then the best student of all, he says, I only see the eye, I don't see anything else. And then the teacher says, shoot, and he hits the eye, says, that's your vision, that's the way to be focused. Yeah, so in that context, you were saying that, yeah, and you kind of unpacked that principle we were talking about before about consistency, and it brings us to more of a sense of cultivating a result, focusing on consistency. Yeah, really nice. The Jam Turtle's got one, yeah.
Turtle says, I often wonder why living into the person I want to be is even perceived difficult. There are many things I do in my day that come with ease. I think that line, that which seems like poison at first, but tastes like nectar in the end, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. But I can't even say that what I want to do is without delight to my senses, chanting, reading, eating, etc.
Yeah, so just to unpack that a little bit, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is describing various interactions we have with the world and describing them in terms of the modes of nature. So he says happiness in the mode of passion is like nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. And happiness in the mode of goodness, sattva, is like poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. I think it's just so intuitive when we hear that. Everyone says, aha, yeah, I know what that means. Like, let's just say you do yoga and you just really put yourself into it. It can be an intense session, but afterwards you feel very peaceful because everything's opened up and you all the energy is flowing. So in the beginning, it seemed like you were working really hard, but then in the end, the nectar flows. Whereas the opposite is true with those kinds of pleasure that just bombard the senses all of a sudden and you get a rush. But then later on, you pay the price. That's very well known in, especially, all over the world. Everybody knows about that. So then you said, but I can't even say that what I want to do is without delight to my senses. And this is one of the points of Bhakti Yoga. It's more about enlightened engagement with the world. So cooking is one of the main practices of yoga in Bhakti. And because the cooking is done with the spiritual consciousness, it's not just about eating for myself, but you're making it as an offering. And then when you eat, of course, the senses are delighted, but you're eating with a different context. It's not just about me and my tongue, but it actually becomes a way of connecting yourself to the Supreme because you're eating food that's been first offered. And all the practices in Bhakti actually use the senses, but in a way that's connected to our original conscious source. And so that kind of delight to the senses is not that kind of happiness that's like nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. Sounded like I hit a bottleneck there in the digital, something in my mind. Okay, JM, what else?
We have Arash Fatemi. I agree with that, but I think that's an after effect. Miss Angelo's question to me is asking at that moment when someone feels overwhelmed, what can be done? Maybe it's a question of prioritizing or accepting to let go of certain things or other. I have the same struggles. At that moment of identifying the struggle, it's very difficult. Later, it's easy to say it's part of the universe working with me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I got to interject for a second. It was 3 or 4 questions ago, and I'm not even sure if it was Ms. Angelo's question. It was about the feeling overwhelmed and priorities, and at that moment, what do you do? And I felt like it's very easy to say, oh, just think this is a learning experience, just take a step back and so forth. But at that moment, it's just very difficult, right? Even if you think, okay, it's a learning experience, this is better for me, or what can I take out of this? It's very different. You did answer the question eventually, so it's a little late, but I appreciate you reading it off.
Never too late. Can always circle back, because these ideas, they're to be churned. The more you churn them, the more the butter comes out of it. But what you said brought to mind, and so true. It's easy to philosophize and bring forward these pithy points. But then when we're actually under this stress and pressure, and there's some major reversal in our life, we can be catatonic for a second or two or more or days. And there is a grieving process that we naturally go through. Just like if you cut yourself on your physical body, you're going to bleed. And the healing process has to take place. We have a psychological body as well. And when there's something that affects that, there are noticeable ways in which we suffer, and also there's a process of healing that we have to go through also. So many of these principles that we talk about tolerance and forgiveness, and also rising above the idea that I'm the body, and that when something happens, well, it didn't really happen to me, it's just like somebody hit my car. It may take a little time to process, but at least you have somewhere to go that's substantial. Because if you don't, then what happens? Where do you actually take shelter? So if you have bedrock, if you have an understanding of what I'm pulling back to, even as you're processing it, there's a sort of a calm within you, knowing that, oh, I know where I'm getting back to, even though I'm in a maelstrom right now.
That's true. Thank you. And thanks for taking the question.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much. Jam, there's a few more slides. And by the way, Linda gives everyone her best. She's sick for the last few weeks with COVID, and just wanted to say that she wishes she was there, and she gives her best to everybody. Best to you, Linda. Thank you very much for checking in. Okay, get well soon. Okay, a few more thoughts for our consideration, our collective consideration and churning. A proverb attributed to China. Be not afraid of going slowly, be afraid only of standing still. I think that goes back to one of the earlier points, but I like the way it's put. Be not afraid of going slowly, be afraid only of standing still. Don't be afraid to just make consistent progress and move towards it. Next. And just thinking about many of the processes that we take for granted in our life, things that we've learned. For instance, tying my shoes. I don't think about it anymore because I've handed it off to my subconscious mind, but I do remember vaguely my mother teaching me how to do that. And it started with a very conscious effort. I had to do it again and again. And then eventually it just became part of what I do. So, okay, bye, Turtle. Thanks for coming. So many of the ways that we practice, although we can imbibe various bad habits by being mindless or being careless and just getting into ruts, we can, by the same token, develop very healthy habits of mind and practice. Human life is quite exciting because it means that we can get on a new track anytime we decide by applying these principles, one of which was just go slowly, do what you can with what you have right now, and be consistent. And like magic, there's a way in which we can get into a very healthy routine. We can actually turn our life around. It's not without some struggle. It's worth something, so we have to struggle for it. But it does become part of us. So we can't also expect to move forward without problems. And therefore, one of my mantras to myself is that I should be methodical but dispassionate. When I'm dealing with problems, just be methodical. It's always a troubleshooting process, and you take it a step at a time, but be dispassionate When my friend Raj, who's a professional negotiator, told me, he said there's inverse relationship between reason and emotion. So when emotion goes up and reasoning skills go down. So hence being dispassionate is helpful. And if we learn to problem solve throughout, don't be overwhelmed, but just deal with it as it comes, then we find ourselves in a different category just by taking that attitude. Hope some of this is encouraging. It's helpful just remembering these principles. And one of my favorite quotes from Steve Martin, he said, thankfully, perseverance is a good substitute for talent. We come back to the Zoom room just for 1 second. I remember, was a professional athlete, John McEnroe, who used to dominate tennis world, and he would say, he would complain about one of his competitors named Ivan Lendl. And he complained, he said, this guy works so hard. He works 10 times harder as I can. I do. Because he didn't have as much talent, he had to work harder. So John McEnroe was just some kind of phenomenal player from the time he was a child. So if you don't have the talent, you can make up for it with practice. JM, was that the end of the slide deck? Time will promote or expose you. This kind of goes back to what Vicky said earlier. Time is the force that magnifies those little, almost imperceptible, seemingly insignificant things we do every day into something titanic or unstoppable. I love this one. But it's true with good investments of our attention. It may seem small right now, like Mark says, 1 minute of practice, imperceptibly almost. It comes to bear at some point, something titanic or unstoppable. Brilliant. Breakthroughs are the results, are the result of a long series of little things done consistently over time. No success is immediate or instantaneous, no collapse is sudden or precipitous. Prepare, do the simple, little, constructive, positive actions over and over. This is the last slide, everybody. Your ship's not coming, it's already here. We already have what we need. We're in the situation where we have a human body, human platform. We can come back to the Zoom because I have to end. And that is that it's now. We're right now where we have this opportunity. So today, I really liked compiling these because it was a reminder. Such an important reminder with all the obstacles that come from our own mind, but to speak of various shifts in the world in every which way that seem to be out of our control. But we can remember that even if my mind's out of control, it doesn't mean the world's out of control. Everything's going on in an ordered way. And there's a way for us to harmonize with that order and to link into the higher power of the universe. It's called yoga. It's a way of thinking. It's an attitude. It's a way of life. We can reform ourselves little by little and actually improve. That's pretty exciting. Who wants to have one last word? We got 1 minute left. Thanks, Vicky. Who? Anybody else have a comment or an emoji? SN says thank you. Thank you, SN. Thanks for being here. Rajesh gave a heart. JM gave a heart. I'm not insisting upon it. I'm going to give a heart too. Where's my heart? There it is. Okay, everybody. Carrie, thanks. Subhadra said very powerful. Wow, that's good. Arash said thank you, thank you. Tejas, thanks. SN, thank you. Jesse said excellent session. Very applicable to my, oh, I'm glad you used that word applicable. I was hoping today was applicable. Well, everybody, we did it again. We used 1 hour out of our life, out of the around 100 years that we get, which is a big investment of our attention, to some really powerful spiritual, mental food. I hope you all feel nourished and go away happy and pass it on to somebody else, the kind of inspiration you feel. Speaking inspiration, I know for a fact that high in the Himalayas, there are yogis that actually sit in caves to get peace, far away from any of the sounds of the world. But they do come out from time to time to look for fruits and roots. And when they see their colleagues, fellow yogis up on the high peaks of the Himalayas, they feel really inspired. And so they have this tradition where they raise their hands as high as they can into the air and they yell out so everybody can hear it, this phrase that means keep the transcendental vibration going. And it goes like this: Haribo!
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 Haribo! Haribo!
Okay, now Vicky did it in the library. She may be carted away soon. Thank you very much, everybody. See you soon. Thanks for joining in. It was really fun. See you next time.